Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Exit is Now podcast. We're hanging out here at the Exit Planning Summit. Just concluded day 2. We're on a little break before we go out to raise some money for a local charity at our charity Give Back Social. So in the meantime, wanted to invite some friends up to the main stage to get a couple of shows in and continue the conversation with special guests in our Summit series with, I think, unique backgrounds and features and elements of their career. So my friend Carrie up here with us today. It's a big part of what we've done this year at the summit between an author showcase and the Women in Exit Planning Symposium. So I want to kind of take our conversation there, uniquely, particularly to the exit planning community. And we can, I'd like to kind of talk about the presence of women in financial advisory and consulting as well. Yep. I'd like to think we're doing pretty good. I think about maybe 28% of speakers are women. Yeah. We were at the spoke at the Women in Exit Planning Symposium, packed house in there. Biggest one that we've had yet. We've attempted to do that event 3 years now. Yep. And so I do think it's gaining some traction. But let's maybe take a step back and talk to me a little bit about your firm. So if you go and visit your website, you'll find a pretty prominent brand that really focuses on helping the women, female business owners that grow and exit. And I think that as you read on your website, and in all honesty, right, I'm learning as well, that there are some very unique, and I think you actually say it like in your bio or something, like you think it shouldn't matter, but it does. Right. So talk to me about your business and your approach.
You got it. So my business started after I went through the experience of sale. So I built a social media agency, always had a background in brand, built
you can
it. Tell. Always totally focused on that. Built it and sold the business. And in that process, there were no shortage of advisors to help me. I had a financial planner, I had an investment banker, I had all of that. But when I went to look for women who were like me, who had sold their business, I actually really had trouble. I wanted to talk to somebody about oh my God, is my marriage gonna survive this? What do I do when I'm done? I'm young, what am I gonna do next? All of that stuff. And I had trouble finding someone. And so I decided after I exited that I wanted to build a community of exited female founders to provide support and guidance for women who are looking to exit. So I would if somebody sold an agency, somebody wanted to sell an agency, I'd match them with somebody who had sold an agency, all in the space of female founders really being able to give back to other women. And the difference is, you're right, what you said about gender, it technically shouldn't matter. A good business is a good business. And you know that, and I know that. And for sure, I will say that. But I think what the difference is that women are starting businesses at twice the rate of the population. We are.
Yeah, it is. I see.
We're starting them.
Yeah.
But we're not growing them to a place where they can be sellable, or we don't even realize that exiting is an option.
And why do you think that is?
Because we're earlier in the journey. So I think you guys, this is years and years and years of understanding this process, right? Right. We're newer to the space, so many of us. And so we don't have generation after generation of you can do this as a woman. And so I think it's just early. Wow. And so for me, that's where I decided to focus in 2 areas. We know that in the past 10 years, only 1% of exits have come from fully female-founded companies.
Wow.
Yeah. And we know that when they do, they're capturing less wealth, but mostly that's not because they're women. Mostly that's because they didn't start a business that was significantly funded or grew to a size. Right. So my goal is to really help close that exit gap by teaching women and utilizing these women who've exited these great businesses before them, teach them that it can be done.
Yeah, you called it a collective or something like that.
Yeah, I have a collective. I have a community of exited female founders. Yep. And that community has events and all kinds of activities. It's all about what's next, or what we invest in, or what we want to, it's a unique group of women. And from that group, I source advisors who help advise women who are looking to exit. And I teach them, methodologies that are rooted really in all of the amazing value building stuff that you do. It's just really told through a female lens.
Yeah, it's really kind of speaks to them, I would assume.
Yeah, exactly.
I think to your point, I certainly learn as a business owner from people of all generations.
You bet.
But when I see somebody like Justin Goodbread, who just got off the main stage, who's generally in my age group, right? It just hits home a little bit more, because I'm like, oh, I can he's like 4 years ahead of me.
Right.
That's where I can go versus the 75-year-old business owner who might have sold their company for $100 million, right? Definitely learning from them, but it's not necessarily as connecting to me.
Well, also because you're such a big innovator, and like when I look at you, I see everything you're doing with Drive Value and all that. You're like a creative entrepreneur with a lot of different ideas that might have been over time, which is great. And so you see someone like Justin, and you're like, oh, I relate there.
Right.
And for women, what happens there a lot of the time is that so many of us, not all of us, but so many of us are mothers. And so many of us have gone through this process while having children, as men do too, but feeling that sort of societal pressure of like, we're the primary, like that's our responsibility. And many of the times it is. I mean, certainly for me it was. And like, so building a business while building and maintaining your family too, that's the kind of stuff you want to talk about. And I think that to me is really beneficial. And that's with Women in Exit Planning, when we did the symposium, that's a lot of what we talk about, because there are these financial planners who often find that like women want to talk to other women about their wealth a lot of the times. And so that ability to relate is really deep.
So what were some of the like life lessons? Were you building companies and having kids at the same time? It's got to be pretty wild.
Oh, it's wild.
Right? I would agree that.
Yeah.
I guess perhaps call it traditional thinking, I guess, but no doubt I think that.
Well, I'll give you an example from right now, from today. Okay, so my example from today. So I'm here, and I've dedicated 3 days here. Right. And I'm here because I'm contributing to the community, but also I'm learning. Like it's an amazing use of my time. Yeah. I also am, of course, I mean it. Yeah. And I'm also speaking at a bunch of other things. So I'm speaking on June 3rd.
2 days after you leave.
Yeah, right, like 5 minutes later. 5 minutes later, right? So I'm speaking, and all of a sudden I just got a note from my 10-year-old son's teacher that was like, yay, congratulations, we're doing our end of year 4th grade project on, you guessed it, June 3rd. Oh. So what do? Right? I mean, if it were my husband, he would say, this sucks, but I have to do this. What I do, I may change. I was sitting here and thinking to myself, like, sometimes I can't, and that's okay. Yeah. Like for me, I believe that we can build businesses of substance and not sacrifice our time. Right. Yeah. And that's okay. That's cool. Yeah. And like, I highly doubt my husband would move his speaking engagement. I highly doubt it. But you know what? I think for me, like, it's just, I know what sits right with me and what doesn't, and it's okay, and I can still build. I did.
Why do you think that is, though? Do you think, like, why?
Why do you think for me?
As you say and talk to that, right? Yes. I think about in my situation, what would I do?
What would you do?
Right? I don't.
What do you think you do?
Obviously, like, I don't know how much you know about my story. My kids are technically my stepkids, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I just say that, we're very close. To call me dad.
Yep,
it's like
totally.
You probably wouldn't even know that if I didn't say that. But I say that because they just entered my life like 5 years ago.
It's amazing.
Right? So I'm like, this year in particular has been like a really learning year for me, not as a perhaps a businessman, but as a dad. Yep. And I give you a quick example, and we'll round out your story, but we were at the Drive Value launch party in Cleveland, right? There's like 300 people there. Yes. And my kids really wanted to come. And that's cool, like we're gonna bring them there, but I was like, guys, it's a business event, and I don't know if you've ever been to a business event. You're certainly not with me. Right. And sure enough, I get in, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and my uncle comes up to me, and he goes, hey, your youngest daughter, Jolene, is crying at the table over here, and I really can't find Joy, so I figured I'd find you. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'll come over, show me where she's at. She comes over, she's crying. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what's up, Joe? And she's like, well, I just thought I'd be able to hang out with you more.
I know.
And, and it's like, oh.
I know. I know. Like, so what did you do?
I picked her up, and I said, would you like to go have a business conversation? She's like, yeah, that sounds cool. Good. So I pick her up, and she's getting kind of big, right? Like you pick her up, she's 8. Yeah, I went over and I walked around the car a little bit, and we were just like kind of joking, but she's like, obviously everybody's looking at us now, and there's a spotlight like this on the car, so she's getting a little shy and awkward. And I said, let's go talk to some people. And she's like, okay. And we start talking, and then finally she looks at me and she goes, I'm done. Dad, I think I just want to go back to the table with Uncle Steve. I'm like, see, I told you.
There you go.
But I don't know, honestly, when you asked, you said, I think I know what's right for me, not that it's right or wrong for your husband, but he might not. And as a parent, not necessarily as a father or mother, as a parent, I'm thinking through
what would
I do?
What would you do? But
I
think it really, I think you learn your limits and you learn, see the gift of entrepreneurship for me, and what I see as a gift for so many women is like, we can build the businesses we want on the way we want. So one of the things I always say is like, people say all the time, like, Carrie, you built this big business and you raised these 3 kids. So I have 2 older kids that are 21 and 17, and then I have the baby who's 10, which is why I know how fast it goes and I can't miss this project. But like, they say, how do you have it? You had it all. And I said, yeah, you can have it all, but you just can't have it all at the same time.
Sure.
And so I think the gift of entrepreneurship is the ability to build a business on your own terms. And so I think sometimes when we build smaller, it's smaller with intention. Yeah. Like you say, yes, I'm building smaller, but I'm building smaller because I'm also building my family in this moment. Fair. And that's my responsibility. And, and I think that it's understanding those nuances without judgment that I think really help.
Cool. So we got a big day coming up tomorrow.
Big day.
You're on the power session stage, right? On this very stage.
Big day.
And really cool. Again, we go to a lot of traditional professional advisory type conferences. And when we came back from the pandemic, we wanted to add in something that was kind of TED Talk style, right? Like 15 to 18 minutes of the most powerful message you can give your peers out in the audience. Poetry slam, I always say, kind of style. You won't be able to see anything out in that crowd, so that could be good or bad, whatever your style is. But give me some hints into what we will see.
Some hints into what you will see.
Yeah, like what are like maybe top 2? Give me like a top takeaway. Like, what are you most passionate about within your 15 to 18 minutes?
Oh gosh. Well, of course, I am, for this talk, I am the most passionate about the fact that I am getting to stand in front of a room full of people who collectively can truly help close that exit gap and help women exit for more. And the idea that if I can get them to understand that it's not a girl boss message. This is not like, oh, girls are selling for less, boo-hoo. It's here's the data, here's why it exists for these reasons. And it's not sexism, it's not the reason. It's not bias. It's matter of fact of these are some of the challenges that have been happening. And here are these slight tweaks that we can do to close it. Like think about the business opportunities, Scott. Like think about how many businesses are opening that are women founded. So if we just get them
more so than ever in history.
More so than in history.
And they're going to have the same issues as a business, not as a woman, just as a business owner.
As a business owner. It's irrelevant. So you have women that are opening businesses. If we can help educate them on the process of exit planning, financial planning, all of it, we collectively will make so much money and contribute to the good of the world.
It's a win-win.
That's it. It's a win for everybody. It's a win for everybody. And so that's what I'm the most excited about. I am opening with a joke, and I really hope people laugh, but I think they will. I think they will. And if they won't, I just can't see them anyway.
You can't see them anyway.
I can't see them, so I'll just you'll have to laugh really loud from right over there.
Or
you'll
from the back,
guffaw.
And you'll guffaw. And maybe they'll catch on, right?
Yes, thank you. Laugh into a microphone. So well, it sounds loud.
I mean, I think it's a message that the audience needs to hear, right? So when you think about, for me, one of the reasons I loved you coming to this show and your commitment here is because, for me, the summit's all about building best-in-class advisors that become the most valued advisor to their owners.
That's right.
So that means we kind of have to know a lot about stuff that's going on, right? And
that's right.
It's kind of like the SEPA program, very broad but not very deep, but they need to know enough to know when, I think I need to bring in Carrie, actually. That's a specialist in this, just no different than an attorney, an estate planning, whatever it might be.
That's exactly right. And I think that it's an interesting message to deliver to the audience, right? Because it's there's a great representation of women, but there's a lot of guys who and I'm gonna have to explain to them why there's an exit gap when realistically we all know if you build a good business, if I'm going to sell a business and it's a good business, it's gonna sell.
Right.
It's just we're not getting there.
Right.
So that's what that's the shift I have to make for them. It's gonna be a really, really interesting talk.
Well, I really appreciate the commitment and everything that you have going on. I think it's going to be a fun show. We'll have you on another show, and we're going to be diving deeper here.
Can't wait.
Basically in the fall time. So this is a little hint to where we'll go next. She has a book that we haven't talked about, a whole practice that we haven't talked about, but I look forward to having a deeper conversation. And let's get out to that social.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Have a couple of cocktails and raise some
Let's
money for some
go.
charity. Thank you for coming on the show. And
Thanks so much.
We'll see you
Thanks,
outside.
Scott.
Thanks.
As a certified exit planning advisor, you know every business exit is unique. But does your software slow you down? Tired of juggling spreadsheets, clunky project tools, or rigid software made from someone else's methods and processes? Meet Ella, a flexible, intuitive exit planning workbench built for trusted advisors. Ella helps you easily coordinate with your exit team, build business value over time, and create customized exit strategies tailored to each client. With Ella, trust, not transactions, drives advantageous exits. Design personal roadmaps to unlock client potential and strengthen your relationships. Ready to transform exit planning? Join the Ella waitlist today at exitwithella.io/exit is now and get 50% off your first 6 months.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a SEPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. Hanging out now with my dad, Chris Snider, at the 10th anniversary of the Exit Planning Summit. So I had to get Dad back on the show. He's been on the show a bunch of times. Here we're doing our special edition Summit series. Yep. A bunch of guests over the couple of days, from award winners to power session speakers. And I had someone real special on earlier today, Rich Jackham, one of the founders, one of the co-founders of the Exit Planning Institute, who had a ton of stuff to say about you in a very good way, right? He took you could tell Rich was taking down a memory lane. But first, let's start with 2 anniversaries to celebrate. So the 10th anniversary of the Exit Planning Summit. Now, before the Exit Planning Summit was the summit, it was the EPI International Annual Conference.
Correct.
That you actually created and chaired for the very first time in 2011, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So back down in Florida, just on the other side. Yep. I wanted to have you on the show to kind of take that trip down memory lane a little bit and touch on our history and visit that first ever summit. I was actually there as an attendee, as somebody that was shadowing you and learning the business.
We were roomies.
But yeah, we were roomies back then too. We were like quite literally sharing a hotel room, 2 queen beds. And you get up early for these things, right? So we're like having to like time out when we're taking showers and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, I got up early.
Well, I think back then I was probably sleeping or having too many cocktails with Craig West. But nonetheless, what was going through your mind? I mean, it's got to be, I always just find it fascinating talking to kind of industry pioneers like you who have done something that was brand new for the very first time, never been done before, new topic, exit planning, 60 people, small community. Yeah. I think it's certainly hard to put on a conference, and a quality conference, but it's like we have 8,000 SEPAs to pick from now, right? Like the goal is to get 1,000. But you back then had 120 SEPAs, and you're like, let's get half, let's get 50% attendance at this conference. Yep. And you did. You had 60 people show up. Yep. But just what was on your mind back then as you, like, why do the conference? Like, why say, like, we don't do this now, let's do this? And then take me back to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What was on your mind as you showed up to your first ever EPI conference?
So as you know, I got my SEPA in November 2008.
Yep.
Didn't do anything in 2009. I was closing a big deal that year.
Yep.
And I said to my partner, we need to focus on getting this deal done. Once this deal gets done, then we'll take a look at this exit planning stuff and figure out how we're going to integrate it. 2010 rolls around, and I was actually talking with Rich about this. I remember I said, I was really a real pain in the ass because I was very vocal because came out of SEPA like pumped. Kind of like our SEPAs are today. I was really pumped and excited. Like, this is huge. There's this huge hole that we can fill, we can do it. And I was very excited. And so I started calling Rich and Pete saying, we need to get a summit. We need chapters. We need all this stuff. And Rich didn't actually answer my question when I asked him. I said, were you getting tired of me calling you?
I kind of asked him similar questions, Dad, and he'd actually said, he didn't say anything like, man, pain in my ass. He said, Chris was wildly passionate.
Yeah.
Like he was on it, and so we just finally said, just go, man. Like just take it, run.
So what he and Pete did was Rich came back and said, hey, would you like to be on the EPI board? Because we had a EPI board at that time, made up of the members. And I said, yeah, I'd be honored, And he says, okay, as a board member, everybody's got to do something. I said, like, okay, what do you want me to do? He said, the first thing I want you to do is do the stuff you've been telling us we have to do. I want you to start a chapter, and I want you to form and be the chair of a national conference. Because what I was passionate about is at the time we went through SEPA. Now there weren't a lot of us. But you could tell if there were 120 and we got 60 there, the people that were doing this in 2008, 2009, were passionate about it, right?
Absolutely.
They were all pioneers then. And they were all passionate about it. But what happened is you'd go to SEPA and you'd hang with this group for a week because everything was in person then. And then you'd never see them again.
Yeah, you guys would all move across the United States.
Right? I mean, there wasn't any social platform. There was no, so basically a static website. And I thought, well, we're never going to form any kind of community and the force that we need to be if we don't form that community, right? So part of my passion was, I went back to Rich. I said, look, at least once a year, we've got to get people together, And then we also said, during the course of the year, we've got to get these chapters out there so that we have these little fires going on around the country, right? I call them drums, One drum's beating in Cleveland, another drummer beating in Dallas, another drum in San Francisco, and boom, boom, it keeps getting louder and louder and louder. And those activities are going on during the year, and the whole community gathers once a year. And that's kind of how Rich said, that's a great idea. Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Well, it had to be a great idea, right? Because now you went from those 3 chapters beating drums to almost 35 chapters beating drums today, and 60 people at a conference to nearly 1,000 people in 2025. So that drum is pretty damn big these days.
Yeah, the drum's getting a lot louder.
Loud, big and
so
loud.
it was interesting though because we had no money. I said to Rich, "What's our budget?" He said, "There's no budget." There
was. We had to we associated with a group called NACVA, NACVA, by many.
Parnell
and then we said
Brian.
A lot of our SEPAs back then were also held their designation, so it was natural for us to kind of combine. I picture it honestly when I was there. It reminds me of what we do today. We do these pre-summit workshops. You have a single room for 60 to 80 people like you do now. And that's what we did at the summit. I do remember that. But I couldn't imagine Rich and Pete had like a whole budget. But you were doing something for the first time too. You didn't run a conference before.
I had no idea what I was doing, honestly. Dennis Gano, who was the executive director of EPI, had done conferences before, and he was credentialed as an executive director. And so he did have some knowledge of what to do. So I relied pretty heavily on him. We formed a committee, and we got together and we kind of formed an agenda, and we developed a budget, and NACVA really helped us out a lot by allowing us to use the room. I'm not even sure they charged us for the room. I think we were just a young organization. They had a good relationship with Rich, and they said, we'll help you guys out. You can have one of our rooms, which today, if you think about it, that's pretty generous.
That was
of them to do that.
I mean, we weren't owners of EPI yet, but knowing what I know now about conferencing, that was a pretty generous office.
But there's some people like that are even here today that were at that first
it's
conference.
wild.
Of course, Rich was there, but John Warlow was a speaker
Sean, Tom Deans.
tomorrow.
Yep.
And John was there with his first product. It was like the first product in the industry. It was called Sellability Score. You'll probably get a laugh out of that.
Yep.
And Pete had cut a deal with him that he would get the SEPAs to use his product. And
sounds like
how
Pete,
Pete was, right?
Yep, sounds like Pete.
We all walked away with a license for Sellability Score, which is today we know is Value Builder.
Yep.
It's much more built out, obviously. Craig West was there. That's where I met Craig West.
Who's here? Tom Deans.
Tom Deans was at our first conference.
Remember I told you the
that.
other day. I went down this deep dive. So as we're here at the summit celebrating our 20th anniversary as well, I went down this deep dive old school Dropbox folder of stuff that was sent actually by Pete. And you could see there's he did a lot of panel discussions.
Yeah, it was all panel stuff.
And there's some name brands that, to your point, there's probably 5, 6, 7 people that were at that original show that are now here today.
Yeah, I had rolled out the Northeast Ohio chapter, was the first chapter at EPI, and I did a presentation on how to roll out, a chapter, because that was one of the things we were trying to. It's crazy, because we've obviously come a long way.
Yeah, it's come a long way, absolutely. I noticed too that you had talk about conference management. I noticed at the tables in the room you had white linens on the tables, which for people conferencing, if you will. They're spilling coffee, there's meals on there, those things had to be so dirty. I don't remember, but they had to be so dirty, it's wild. So the other thing that we're celebrating this year is our 20th anniversary, and we kind of been talking about Rich Jackham, who was one of the co-founders of the Exit Planning Institute and has been spending some time with us here at the summit this year, was inducted to the Exit Planning Circle of Excellence, which acts as our Hall of Fame. And we kind of went down memory lane as well when he started that. So just a short, really 2 years later, you came upon the Exit Planning Institute and got into the credential and the program and came back. What was going through your mind then, right? So go back even 2, 3, 4 more years when you became a SEPA 2008, and the industry was just so new. And no one really knew what you were talking about when you left the SEPA program because it had just begun. The whole profession was just created a year or two prior.
Yeah, and SEPA today is very different than SEPA then.
I would agree.
But what happened is I was already doing the BIGS model, M&A and growth, and I got an email from a friend of mine who's in Arizona. He had gotten solicited an email through an email campaign about the SEPA program. And he knew, because I was already passionate about this, right, before I even heard about EPI. And he forwarded the email to me, and he said, I found this organization. This sounds like something you might be interested in. And so I went online, to check it all out. I had a phone call with Dennis Gano. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm just going to take a leap here. What can I lose? And go get this credential. And like a lot of SEPAs that come out of that experience, I was blown away. It made me realize the scope of how big, an exit plan, how big a task that is, how many people need to be involved. I was talking with somebody earlier, and at the time I didn't really, I don't want to say I didn't care about how owners felt personally or their personal plans or financial. I was there to help grow the business and sell it. People were bringing me in to grow it and sell it. But what I was noticing, which kind of made me curious when I got the email, I saw the 3 legs of the stool. That intrigued me because when I would go back and see my clients, 9 months later, 12 months later, even though we had been successful at, selling their business, they didn't seem happy.
Yeah.
I'm like, how can you not be happy? You have all this freedom, you have all this money now, why aren't you happy? And then it seemed like when I got that message, that initial thing about the balance between, Pete's thing about the 3 legs of the stool, that sort of resonated with me and made me, intrigued me, made me curious. And that's really what drew me to the SEPA program. And then going through the program and, I was kind of already doing value acceleration, but I wasn't, learning about financial planning and estate planning and private equity and, charitable donations and, philanthropy and all these other things that we teach. That was all new to me.
Yeah, well, same thing with when Rich was on the show too. He said that him and Pete, right? They would sell the company's investment bankers.
Yeah.
He said the same thing. He noticed that his clients in a 60-day check-in, he called it 60-day surveying. Him and Pete would just do 60-day surveys, and they kept coming back like really crappy. And he said, "Dude, I don't understand. Like, what's going on here?" And Rich, it was funny too because we talked about the relationship between Rich and Pete. Pete being more of the outward-facing salesman and ambassador, and Rich being the more engineer and academic. They wrote this book together, and Rich went in to create the SEPA program while Pete went out to sell it.
Yeah.
And but it was all based in the same model, and it's so interesting to see how onto it you guys all were. You were all working in the market and sensing it along the right way. Pete and Rich saw it in 2003, 4, and 5. Yeah. You began to see it in 2005, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
And then boom, we all can kind of combine together. But it's interesting to see because what I think that you have this interesting ability for me that you're part visionary, part person that can execute. It has to be the system and the engineer that's kind of in you too.
Yeah, I think Amy called me a freak of nature.
Freak of nature, our Amy Wirtz 2024 Exit Planner of the Year. But what I think it was cool because you were even though you didn't own the business yet, you were almost like a business partner to them. And they said that Rich was saying that when they went to sell the company, you were top of mind for them because he said Snider's so involved, maybe he wants to buy it.
He'd probably buy it, yeah.
So let's investigate that question too, because what Rich said, he said he knew early on that because I came to a couple of those deal meetings, but he said there was a meeting where I wasn't at that he said Chris was primarily buying this because he wanted to put you in charge of it. He said he talked to me about that, and Rich, off the show, said he looked, I think maybe at Team EPI that was there, and he goes, "Chris is going to let this guy run this company?"
Yeah, I was probably 26?
Or maybe even younger, but I wasn't polished like we are today, right? It was
you were a landscaper.
Well, I was a landscaper. I was mowing lawns and
But you were way more than that. I could see that you were.
Yeah, it was just interesting.
You were an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it was just interesting to hear Rich talk about it and perhaps the vibe that I gave off. Rich being a veteran advisor, right?
Yeah.
And more of an academic. He's looking at me like the kid that's mowing lawns is now going to run this company, and apparently you were like, yeah, you just wait, Yeah. So when you did purchase the Exit Planning Institute, can you talk me through that? What was on your mind? Was it look, Scott and I are going to come into this thing. We're going to get this thing built up, transition it over to Scott's leadership, or from a standpoint of execution, and we're going to run. What was going through your mind in 2012?
I was actually trying to buy it for a good year and a half, actually. So this was the third effort to buy it.
Yeah.
We formed a partnership the first time, and that deal fell through. Mm-hmm. Then there was another partnership, and that deal fell through. And I finally called Rich up. I'm like, "Look, I can do this
deal on my own. Yeah.
And I can have it done in 60 days. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Sounds good to me." And I remember you saying to me, "Dad, let's just get in the car, drive up to Chicago, and get this thing done." And that's what we did. We went up and met Rich at the Hyatt, and we got the deal done. And my thought at the time was, it'd be a nice side business for you to learn how to run a business. Another business besides what you were doing, more professional type business. And it was very complementary to what I was doing with Aspire at the time, because Aspire was my main business, right? Yeah. And so it was sort of, I actually thought that EPI might be leverageable to expand Aspire. Because as we rolled out the EPI model, I might find a value advisor in another city that's running a chapter that might want to become an Aspire licensee or something like that.
Right.
So we kind of ran these parallel businesses. I didn't have time to run it, right? And if you remember, we decided we needed to get it back to Cleveland so we could give it the right support that it needed to grow. And I just felt, you had been working with me at Aspire for a couple of years, and I just felt like, it was time to.
I remember the day you looked at me and asked me to go do it.
Yeah,
like, hey, I need you to make a commitment for like 2 years. I think it was, right? 2 years, just go and run this company and get it.
Because you didn't want to do it.
Because
I remember vividly because we were in the hallway of my home. Mm-hmm. You were leaving because I think we were just finished up a Kyle Moore Kitchen meeting.
Yep.
And I said, I need you to take over this thing. And you were like, I don't know if I really. I'm like, look, the family made an investment here, and I don't have time to do it.
We're invested in
and
this
I
thing.
need you to do it, whether you want to do it or not. If for other reason, you do it for the family. And you've always been a good family guy.
Yeah,
so you said, all right, I'll do it. And I said to you, if you do it, you got to make a 2-year commitment. And if you don't want to do it after 2 years, we'll get somebody else, or I'll sell it, or we'll do something.
We'll roll back into Aspire and get somebody else. But well, here we are, And here we are, 11 years later?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the future, and then we can wrap and get out and raise some money for some charities.
Okay.
But, again, 20 years for me is as much about appreciating the past and the come from, but also looking towards the future.
Yeah.
So where are we going? I think there's a wall outside, for example. It's like a magnet wall that you could write down. Where do you think this is going to be in the next 20 years? And what's your answer? What would you write on that wall?
Well, it's hard to really look out 20 years.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It is.
Somebody that's been around having a career for 43 years.
Yeah.
My career is, I've reinvented myself so many times over 40 years. So it's hard to really look out 20 years. But I think, what I see, and I would predict would happen, is what I call completing the circle. When I went into this thing, I always envisioned a circle, with half the circle being covered by advisors and the other half being owners. And I think, we felt like we need to go retrain the advisors first, because they're the ones that are, the owners go to for help. And frankly, at the time I felt, and I think a lot of people agree with me now, not so many did at the time,
back then.
But now I think that you would agree with me, is like the advisors weren't teaching the owners the right way to exit. And they weren't working as a team. You remember our 3 pillars: awareness, teamwork, and process?
Yeah.
Those were the 3 pillars we created when we developed our initial strategy, because we weren't working as a team. People didn't understand, or they misunderstood what exit planning really was, right? And we had no process. And so we said, let's go after the advisors. But in my mind, I always felt like at some point, if we could have this group of educated owners and another group of educated advisors, we would complete that circle, right? And in effect, we could almost create our own marketplace of like ready, significant companies, a marketplace of significant companies.
And owners that are all thinking that way.
That's what I'm saying. It includes the owners and the advisors. You've got all these businesses that are, ready, significant businesses, and it's really sort of, it's the marketplace that drives all other private businesses, right? It's the place you want to be, because those are where the premium businesses reside. And I really think that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
And I think, our venture into Drive Value is like the first step towards bringing that platform together that doesn't just include advisors, but includes the owners into the community as well.
And completing
that
circle.
now. Yeah, I was just talking with some people this afternoon. I'm talking to a lot of people this afternoon. It gets me so excited because I can kind of see it coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
And when I think about the significance, the social and economic significance of a marketplace like that, of not 20 to 30% of businesses being ready for growth or exit, 70, 80% of businesses being ready for growth or exit, and maybe residing in this circle that I talk about, this marketplace. I just think of, how many people, communities, people, and not just economically, the social impact of that. I think that in the next 20 years, we're going to see that come together.
Yeah, I think the drivevalue.com campaign and brand and platform that we launch and it has been a big part of what we've been talking about here at the Exit Planning Summit, I think is a big part of that journey. I think that we've come to a capacity and a volume with our certified exit planning advisors that it's time that business owners know who they are and that business owners have the central hub like our advisors do at EPI. Business owners and the people that surround them internally, their business leaders, their executives, their directors, all understand what it takes to drive value into your company and align business, personal, and financial goals through the value acceleration methodology and with a certified exit planning advisor. Right. And so I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, you need the platform. That's
absolutely.
So what was missing in the marketplace, back in when Rich and Pete came up with this thing, and eventually you and I took it over, is, there was no platform.
Yeah.
Right. It was just fragmented. Yeah. People, everybody's doing their own thing, and there's a lot of confusion, and so it's not surprising that we wouldn't be successful, right? We're running around, fragmented without any kind of a plan, and can't do it. I mean, just think of what Justin talked about, right? We weren't seeing sowing the seeds, So to me, it's like EPI became that platform that everybody could launch from, and became that foundation, that we could all work from. And I sort of see Drive Value being that next platform to bring not just the advisor community, but the owner community together on one platform, one place, and I think it could be, like the launch of the next big thing.
I think so.
As EPI was, 12 years ago.
Yeah, 10 or 12, exactly. Yeah. Well, Ed, it is time for us to go. Great. I appreciate coming on the show.
Sure.
We'll have to have you on another time as we walk through the second half of the year to see how the rest of the 20-year celebration has been going.
I'm having a ball, by the way.
It looks like you walked into the final session. You look like you were having fun.
People said to me, "You're always smiling." I say, "Well, I'm having fun." So,
well, let's go out and have some more fun, raise some money for charity. Thanks, Dad, for coming on the show.
Sure.
We'll see you guys later. Thanks.
Bye.